The personal statement I consider to be one of the hardest, or maybe the hardest part of the application process. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. If you're stopping by for the first time, my name is Esther, and if you have always been here, well, thank you for coming around again. So I know it's been a minute, it's been forever that I have been on here. I don't want to go into details on anything about why I've been away or stuff like that. So what I'm gonna do is, if you guys want to know just what's been happening or whatever, I can make another video later to talk about that. But for now, I'm just gonna go straight to the content of the video, which is about writing a personal statement. I decided to do a personal statement video first because I know that the deadline is around the corner. It's the 30th of November and people are currently trying to get things done, and the personal statement I consider to be one of the hardest, or maybe the hardest part of the application process. Not necessarily because it's hard in itself, but just because every other thing is just more of like filling the form or putting together documents, compared to this one where you really have to write. That's why I think it's different, and that's why I'm like, I think I'm gonna make this first so that people can kind of start applying the tips that I suggest, you know, to their papers, their personal statements, if they need to make any corrections or changes, while the next video will just be kind of going over the form and everything else. And then also I would say that this video is specifically tailored to BEREA College's personal statement, because I will be using the prompt as a guide to talking about it. But if you do have, if you're applying to another school, it's okay to use some of the things that I say, because at the end of the day, it's just a personal statement. I have used this format for other personal statements that I've written, so it doesn't necessarily have to be for BEREA, but you just have to take out things that you don't need or things that you think doesn't apply. For example, maybe for a scholarship, if you're not applying for a scholarship, you can take out information related to that. But you get the drift, y'all. So basically, I have the prompt, and I'm gonna kind of read through it, and so we see kind of where we're going with this. So it starts with saying that the essay should be 2 to 5 pages, preferably typed, double spaced, in no less than 10-point font. My essay was, my personal statement or essay was about 5 pages long. I wrote that much because I just felt, you know, I was writing and it got that much, so it wasn't like I started and I'm like, oh, I want to get 5 pages or anything. If your essay is going to be only like 2 to 3 pages, you're within the limit, so I think you'll be fine. But obviously it's best to go into details and write as much as necessary for your situation. Then also I definitely suggest that you type your paper and not write on paper like to send it to them. You can write on paper when you're still drafting your personal statement, which is what I think I did in my time. I think I probably used like a pencil and paper, so that way I was able to write and make, you know, corrections as necessary before transferring to the computer. Writing in general, especially when you're writing about yourself, tends to flow more naturally when you're writing on paper compared to writing directly on the computer. It just doesn't feel the same. It doesn't flow the same, you know. So I would suggest write on paper first, but if it works better for you to write on your computer first, to type it on your computer, then of course go ahead and do that. But definitely at the end, make sure you have it on your computer, because it's easier for anybody to read it, not like your handwriting, which might not be legible to every person that's, you know, looking at it. Next, it says, as this essay may be used to assist in course placement, students should receive no assistance in writing or editing the essay. This is very important because say for example somebody else writes your paper for you, and let's say this person is like a proficient English speaker and you're an intermediate English speaker. They write your paper, your essay for you, it's all perfect. I mean, you know, it's all really, really good, and the grammar is so good compared to your own grammar. And then you end up getting into BEREA, for example, and then you get there, your English is not up to par with what you had in your statements, in your personal statements. That's not good on you at all. It's dishonest, and they don't, like, that's just, I don't know what BEREA would do in that case, but it's not good. So I definitely would tell you to write your essay by yourself. If your English is good enough in terms of like the minimum IELTS or TOEFL score, you're fine. So you don't have to worry about it being perfect. Like, do your best and just let BEREA see who you are as, you know, you. for you. So don't try to go get somebody to write it for you. And by the way, I just wanted to say, guys, that this video is probably going to be really long because I'm talking to you like I would talk to you in person. Like, I'm really explaining things very well, so I'm not just highlighting specific like 1 or 2 points only. I'm going into details, so it might be long, but make sure you watch the end if you want to get all the information that you need. And so this is the prompt now. It says the essay should address the following points: 1, an overview of your educational and life experiences. 2, what you plan to do after completing your studies or your education. 3, why you wish to return or not return to your home country. And 4, description of ways you have positively impacted your community. And finally, they say because the content of the essay is an important part of evaluating a student for admission, it is to your advantage to add detail. The last part is very important. I think the reason they said that is because, okay, so they're giving you 4 prompts for you to write your essay. Some people would think that it's okay to just say, okay, number 1, these are the answers to that, number 2, the answers 3 and 4. No, you're not going to write like that. You want to have flow to your story, and you want to have details, as detailed as possible, that you need to express your story or to prove a specific point you're trying to prove. So don't feel like you have to limit yourself to specific, just like literally what they ask you, just that. No, your essay has to include this, but it doesn't have to only be this. It can cover all the aspects of your life that you feel is necessary to support this, anything you say here. So basically for my essay, I'm going to kind of talk about it. I'm going to give summary of like my sections and kind of like what I said in this section and what I said in this section to compare it to the prompts, and you see how I did it. Whenever you want to write your personal statement, I found that the way that tends to work for me to be more seamless in my writing for my personal statement is to write a story or bits of stories in one bigger story or bigger picture. You get what I mean? If you think about writing about yourself from a perspective of telling your story, you're more likely to, you know, hit the things that you need to hit, because you're thinking about your life from like, oh, this phase to this phase to this phase. So you get to remember the, you know, the major points that certain things happened, compared to if you just try to list, oh, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. You might just have like little loopholes and stuff where you don't cover things that you really would need to cover, you know. So that's why I think that it's nice to write kind of like a story from certain points in your life to where you are today. The point of doing this is to prove something, to prove yourself, to show that 2 things for BEREA: you're academically fit to get into the college, and you're also a student that has needs that need to be met, which is financial needs. So you're not only proving to BEREA that you're a good student that loves the major that they want to study, you're also proving that you have all those dreams, but because of certain circumstances you're not able to fulfill them, and therefore you need the education and basically the scholarship. I would say that the format that I used in terms of writing a story is kind of like there's 3 major sections of the format. First, I would say, is your story itself, like the background information, what happened, what was the turning point, what was the experience, what was the event that happened that you want to talk about. Is it a job that you did? Is it some experience? Is it somebody that you met? You know, and then next you're going to talk about the effect or the outcome of that story in your life, in your mindset, in the way you think, or just something that happened to you in general as a result of that event that you talked about, which is the story. And then the third part is, so what now? Like, where you're going, what do all of those things have to do with you now, and what you're trying to do with BEREA. So now I will go over my own essay with relation to the prompt. Okay, so the first prompt says an overview of your educational and life experiences. Here, this was basically where I talked about, I first started with talking about how when I was a kid, my dad wanted me to be a doctor, or my parents actually wanted me to be a doctor, which is like a human doctor, which I was fine with. I actually liked it. I liked the idea of medicine when I was younger. But then as I grew, I started finding out that I was drawn to like helping animals, seeing sick animals and wanting to help them. So I realized that I think that I would like to treat animals more than I would like to treat humans. And so that there is my story. My story is, this is what happened to me when I was growing up. That what was the implication? The implication, now this is where I'm going to insert my educational experiences. In school, I started being more intentional about the courses that I was taking, like the classes I was taking in school. I had to be what in Nigeria we call a science student, because in high school you get to choose whether you're going to be a science student or not a non-science student. So I started taking science classes and things like that. I talked about how when I was in school I would volunteer at the school farm and take care of like the animals. I took agricultural science, I loved it. I took biology, I loved it. And so, you know, things like that. That is the academic aspect. The third aspect is, so how does that apply to where I am going, which is wanting to apply to BEREA? The kind of things that I said was the education system in Nigeria is not really fit for me to become the veterinarian that I want to become. I want to be really successful. I want to be able to come back to my home country to make change and things like that. And so I would like to study in America, and BEREA has the avenue for me to do that because they are offering, you know, the scholarship. And so I'm just basically tying it back to the scholarship after tying it back to my academic goals. So that's where, you know, section 1 that's kind of how you go about section 1, which is an overview of your educational and life experiences. Then secondly, it says, what do you plan to do after completing your education? In this second part, what I did was I continued from, you know, talking about the education system and things like that in Nigeria. I started saying that I plan to come back to Nigeria because of the way things are in the veterinary industry. I would like to come and like work with organizations to educate people on the importance of like animal life and animal welfare, conservation, and things like that, because I believe that there are people who, you know, actually can do something in that field, but because they're not maybe really educated about it, they don't really do anything. And so I would like to come back and do all the things and inspire change. In addition to wanting to come back to Nigeria, right, I talked about how if I go to BEREA, I get to do pre-veterinary medicine, so not actual vet school in itself. So after I graduate from BEREA, I would love to go to vet school in America as well. I talked about how like I know vet school is expensive and it's hard to get into vet school and all of that, but then, you know, I had to show them that I was capable. So I said that, oh, I know that if I come to BEREA, because BEREA has a work-study program, I'll learn how to juggle my education and work, which will prepare me for vet school, because vet school is really hard and expensive as well. So that means that I'll learn how to juggle things, maybe work while I'm there, and just apply everything that I learned while at BEREA to my journey in veterinary school. So this is kind of where I'm showing them that I'm going to use the work study experience as a learning opportunity to do better things in my future and stuff like that. Now the third question, which is, or the third prompt, which is why you wish to return to your home country. Basically, I already started talking about it earlier, which is that I plan to return to my home country because of certain things that I saw when I was back at home. It caused me to want to come back to make change. Now, I don't know if you're writing and you want to be very clear that you do not plan to go back to your home country, feel free to do that. But for me personally, in as much as I do have certain plans, and I did also when I wrote this essay of, you know, going back home and doing certain things, I genuinely do not have plans to settle at home just because of the opportunities, obviously. So it's going to be more of like working both at home and here, you know, that kind of thing. I just want to be able to balance things out, but I didn't really go into all of that details. I just said that I was going to go home. So for you personally, if you're very clear that you do not want to go home, you can feel free to write that and explain what you plan to do in the States if you're staying there. But for me, I just felt like it was safer to talk about wanting to come back home, because that would kind of inspire that idea of change and wanting to create change where I'm from. I feel like it just kind of shows that passion rather than just saying, oh, I just want to come and live in America and fulfill my dream. Like, yeah, that's nice. But it's very hard to kind of show how you might have passion to change things in America. Like, it's not your home country, you know what I mean? So I think it was easier to just kind of talk about what I want to do back at home and just say I want to come back home. Like, no one's gonna send you back home if you don't want to go back home later, you know? So I think that it was safer for me to talk about wanting to come back home. And in this section, in terms of what I talked about before, which is the 3 format, that is the story, implication, and the, you know, how does it relate to where you're going? My experiences in Nigeria were that, you know, the facility was bad. I used to see that animals were suffering because people didn't really care about them that much and whatever. And as a result, my mindset was, you know, I want to be able to make a difference to this. That's the implication. I want to be able to make change. I talked about how when I was back at home, I tried to reach out to certain organizations because of the things that I saw, maybe like at a zoo, and I saw that maybe the animals were not being treated properly, and I tried to write to them and I didn't get feedback. So that's something where I'm talking about the effect of what I saw on my mindset and my actions. That just also shows that I'm proactive and I just want to make change. But then how does that apply to the third aspect, which is wanting to apply to BEREA? It applies because when I come to BEREA and I gain the education that will equip me to be able to come back and make those changes, BEREA will provide the knowledge for me to do that. And one thing I also want to mention is how I researched a lot about BEREA. And when I researched a lot about BEREA, I found out at the time that BEREA had a farm, and as somebody that's interested in animals, I was like, because I've, you know, volunteered at a farm in my high school, I think that I'll be able to continue that at BEREA and be exposed to more experience that will prepare me for vet school and stuff. So they would even see that, dang, this girl is everywhere. She's been reading about the school. I even told them that I watch YouTube videos, I read reviews about the college, I read alumni's comments, and these are things that I really did do. You know, I looked up a lot of things about BEREA, and I mentioned all of those things in my essay that I did those things. So yeah, it's important to talk about those things for them to see that you're truly passionate about, you know, the things that you want. Guys, I'm just talking as I remember things, so that's why it's pretty much all over the place, but I hope you understand the things that I'm saying. I was just looking at my notes, and one of the things that I wanted to also mention, this is just in general, is the importance of, you know, talking about like your extracurricular activities and like your leadership experiences and things like that. I talked about how when I was in high school, like right from when I was younger in school, I would always get into competitions. I would always like do well in school. The way it is the littlest achievements that you have, you want to magnify it because you want it to be really impressive. It's not like it's not already impressive, but the thing is, everybody can come and say amazing things that they've done, but you have to be able to show the work behind your achievements. So it's okay to say, yeah, I was the top student in my class, but what makes that unique is behind that achievement that you see, which is top student, there are challenges there that make the experience unique. It's not just, oh, it was a breeze because I was just doing well in school. It was, I had all these difficulties, but despite that, I stood my ground and I continue to do well and I continue to maintain my goals. So things like this kind of show that, you know, that drive is there, that, you know, relentlessness, never wanting to give up, all of those things are there. And one thing I wrote down here is to magnify your little achievements. It doesn't matter how little you think it is. Say for example, let's say you got an award and you weren't the only person that got that award. Who cares? It's not about them, it's not about those people, it's about you. So even if 100 people got that award, talk about how you got this award, talk about how you were involved in this competition. Like for example, I talked about a painting contest that I did in Nigeria, and it was kind of like a big thing back then, but I wasn't the only one. There were so many students from different schools that were involved in the painting contest, but I was like, yeah, you know, I represent my school, this and that. So you want to magnify your littlest achievements. So the last part of the prompt is description of ways you have positively impacted your community. This is where you start to go into your leadership skills and things that you've done, your little volunteer. It doesn't have to be volunteer, I'm just using that as an example. Maybe when you were in high school, you were a prefect, you were a head person in school, you were in charge of something, you were a club leader, you were, you know, things like that. You gotta talk about them. Like for me, I talked about, like I said, I talked about the competitions I was involved in, volunteered at my family's business. That's something that you're doing for your community, you're impacting your community. Volunteering at my school's farm, that was something I didn't do for money. Like I wasn't paid for it, I was just a student in high school and I was doing all these things because I loved it. I would stay after school and just care for the animals because I loved it. When I was home, I was in a youth group, which is basically like a Christian youth group. And so basically I just wanted to point here that it's okay to talk about things that are very, very important to you, like your faith. It's okay if you want to talk about that. So for me, I talked about how in my Christian youth club I was a leader. We would like lead fellowships and have like meetings and just go out and share the gospel to people and things like that. I said that I hoped that after getting to Berea I would be able to apply this leadership qualities in the Berea community as well, and always tying all these things back to Berea, not just talking about it and saying, oh, I was a leader, I did this, I was the one in charge of this event or that event. Okay, now what? How is that their business? It's the business because it makes you an individual that is capable of doing certain things. It makes you an individual that is capable of juggling their academics and non-academic activities. It makes you a person that's showing service to the community. And let me tell you guys one thing, Berea is heavily into that, heavily into service to the community. It happens in different ways. You serving your community happens in different ways. It could be just something that you do. I'm trying to think of like the littlest thing that people wouldn't consider service, but it's still service. It could just be babysitting somebody's child, like your neighbor or something. Like littlest things like that are service to your community. So you can talk about those things and really magnify them, and so it shows that you're selfless. And Berea really loves to see that, because they believe that this is somebody that if we're investing so much in them, they're going to give back so much to the community. So really go into any little service you've done for people around you. Could have been just one person, doesn't matter. So I think that was pretty much it, and that was pretty much what my essay was. So basically at the end of it, I was just like, yeah, I am going to bring all these things to Berea, and how Berea is going to be that place for me to pour out all these things into. So that's two things, talking about myself and talking about how they're the place for me for that. So that was what I did at the end. What else? And also guys, remember the things that I said. If you want to use the format that I used, the 3-block thing, which is your story, the outcome of it in your life and your mindset, and how does that apply to wanting to get into Berea. It's kind of like a way that whenever you're writing, you're like, okay, I know where I'm going, I know what I'm trying to write, instead of you just writing and being like, I don't even know what I'm really doing. Having those 3 steps kind of helps you to know how to balance your essay and to weave things around together. That's what I would say. I think you guys should just do your best. This kind of goes without saying. And make sure that with your essay you proofread a lot. You write a little today, you go back to it tomorrow, you write a little, you go back to it the next day, you make any correction. Because if you actually try to do everything like at a go, what happens is your brain usually is exhausted when you're writing, and so it's like you might not notice things that are wrong. Like I'm pretty sure it happens, like you could write something and not notice certain mistakes, and then you go back to it like 3 days later and you're like, wait, how did I even write this? Like it doesn't even make sense. So it's very important to keep going back to it until the last minutes that you turn it in, that you submit your application. Always update your essay as necessary. You would know at the end of it that you gave it your best. You can read it to your family, just people around you, your friends, if you want to share. Just be like, how do you guys feel about it? Because at the end of the day, those are the people that can kind of let you know how well you're doing. So that's basically all I have to say so far. If you all have any questions, please feel free to comment in the comment section. And anyways, that's the end of this video, and you guys can look forward to my next video, which will go into details with the application process. Thank you all for watching. I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Take care. A feeling for you. Love.